Hey guys, Mike from Nightmare on Maple Avenue here. Finally doing this video, the Scissor mech prop for our Facebook group of Nightmare on Maple Ave's 1,000 member contest. We kind of picked somebody at random and decided to do a Scissor mech prop complete, and give it to the winner. But kind of video the process of how you make one, so anybody else can kind of follow along. Just decided to basically do a base prop, something that would probably sit on the ground if you wanted it to. However, the person who receives it, they could use it any way they want. Got all my materials here. Decided what the hell I'm going to make it out of. I decided I was going to make the scissor prop basically out of 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/16 inch thick steel, and make the base out of 3/4 by 3/4 inch steel. Again, I've said this before in another video. I'm better at building props than I am at making videos, so just kind of bear with me. As you all know, a scissor prop, a scissor mech, or a pantograph is just another way to turn a little bit of linear motion into a lot of linear motion. Basically, take your Halloween prop, and if you have something that moves 6 inches, you want to move it 4 feet, 3 feet, however long. You're just going to take a lot of linear motion. Like for example, in this for this prop, we'll be using a pneumatic cylinder. Most likely it'd be around 4 inches, 5 inches of stroke. This is the stroke of the cylinder. But I'm going to turn, we'll turn that 6 inches or 4 inches of pneumatic linear motion into 3 or 4 feet. In this case, I think I did the math, and I'm just going to, with the lengths I'm going to make, it'll be about probably be about 45 inches of extension on the scissor mech from a 4-inch cylinder. Haven't figured that out. I'm going to do this video in a couple parts. I think I'm going to do the scissor mech first as part 1, and then we'll do part 2 as the base, and maybe part 3 connecting the cylinder to it and getting it all, finishing it up. Like I said, basically, I got my parts. I got this steel from Home Depot. I mean, you can get it at a metal supply shop. Most people don't have a metal supply shop. I got a Home Depot, 3 or 4 of them in a 5-mile radius of my house, so it's easier. It's a little more expensive to buy it at Home Depot or Lowe's than get it buy it in bulk from a metal supply shop. But that's what I got. For my mock-up, I got I got these small 1/4 inch bolts. That's what I decided to use. I mean, you really can only fit a 1/4 inch bolt through a 1/2 by 1/2 inch steel square tube. So basically, that's what I'm going to use. I find it's the best way to do things. I mean, I got a full thread bolt here for the mock-up. When I do the completed prop, and at the end, after it's all painted, I'll swap these out for a shoulder bolt. I mean, the shoulder bolt, if you can see a shoulder bolt, basically has a flat spot here, so the threads don't wear out. And this is where the scissor mech section will actually ride on this shoulder bolt. But I bought these 3/4 inch, these cheap 1/4 inch by 1 3/4 inch bolts just to do the mock-up, make things as you're testing and as you're checking things out, just makes it a little easier. Plus they're cheap. I think they're 6 cents a piece or 5 cents a piece, and you can reuse them. Doesn't matter. These bunch of 1/4 inch locking nuts. I mean, when you make a scissor prop, you want to use locking nuts or double nut it, however you want to do it. I mean, these are cheap. I just think it was $4 for 100 of them at the Home Depot. I mean, you use one, if it doesn't work, it strips out. You just throw it out and get another one. They're so cheap. I'm basically going to do this video the way, with the tools that I have. I mean, you got basically, everybody has their own different types of tools. I mean, I have a welder, I have a chop saw that I use. I just bought a small little 7 1/4 inch chop saw for you know, to dedicate just for cutting steel with a diamond blade on it. We'll see how that works. I don't know, it'll be the first time I'm using it, so so like I said, bear with me with the video. I'm not the best, but for this prop, like I said, I decided to use 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/16 inch thick steel square tube for the scissor mech, and then I'm going to use 3/4 by 3/4 by 1/16 for the base. So you know, let's get to it. For this prop, I decided that my length, and I think I discussed this in a previous video when I talked about making a template for making a scissor mech prop. This is a, you know, two of these rods will make up a scissor mech section, you know, and you could add multiple sections for longer lengths of extension. But for this prop, you know, I decided to go with my lengths to be 11 3/4 inch, and you know, the center hole and the end hole, the distance between there would be 5 5/8, and the distance between the two end holes, center to center, 11 3/4. Again, to make these scissor mech sections, and I said in the previous video, these sections you want to have them identical and do what you can to make them identical. So if you have to set up your saw to cut the lengths on these exactly right, I mean, I've already set up the saw to cut this steel at 11 3/4 of an inch, and you know, basically I have a stop on the saw. Let me show you that. Be a lot of moving the camera about. I got this old cheap chop saw I have here. I just set it up with a carbide blade. It cuts metal, but it's not the best, but it's good enough for making Halloween props. But basically, yeah, I set up this stop on my saw. I put my stock in there, drive my stock to the end stop where it hits here. When I cut the stock, it'll give me an exact length of 11 3/4. No matter how many pieces I put in there, every piece will be 11 3/4. And for any other prop, if you want to change the distances, you do it. You do what you got to do. But basically, that's what I'm going to do now. It's kind of going to get loud. Hopefully, I could do some editing, and I'll just kind of fast forward through some of this stuff. But you know, I gotta basically start cutting these things at 11 3/4 of an inch. I'm looking for at least 5 sections. So that means I'm gonna need 10 pairs, or it's actually 5 pairs, but 10 pieces at 11 3/4 of an inch. So let me cut one. You can kind of see what the hell I'm doing here. Maybe I might be in the way. I don't know. Let's see what we got. Just kind of move things around here. Basically, you know, if you could cut this with a grinder, with a cutoff wheel on it, cut it with a sawzall. Just want to make sure that, you know, as best you can, that each one of these sections is the exact same length when you're going to do it the way I'm doing it on the drill press with a template, to make sure these sections are identical. So let me cut one. Again, it's going to get loud. I cut some already, so I figure I just cut maybe 4 or 5 of them on here for the video, so you can get an idea of what I'm doing. But I put my stock against the stop, start my saw. You can see a carbide blade, a brand new carbide blade, cuts through this stuff pretty quickly, pretty easily. You do it this way. You want to make sure you have safety glasses on, because these little shards of metal just fly everywhere. So there's one. I mean, it's basically 11 3/4 from end to end. And when I cut the next one, you'll see it'll be exactly the same. If I put it up against this stop, it'll be exactly the same. Take your time, cut through it. You know, one of the reasons I decided to go with 11 3/4 of an inch, because at Home Depot, you know, these long rods come 36 inches, and they're usually cut exact, so they don't give you a little extra to account for the width of a blade. So I decided in order to get three exact length rods out of one 36 inch, I decided to go 11 3/4, and that gives me a little left over. But again, here I'll shoot the last one. Nice and easy, slice through it. Might not be the best way to do it, but you know what? Cutting it with a chop saw with a carbide blade, you get these shards on it. It's sort of the same idea as a metal cutting saw, but I can't afford one of those, so I use this old chop saw that I have. Cuts it pretty exact. So there, 3 cuts, and I got 3 exact pieces. So I just want to keep cutting until I got 10 of them. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I need to cut one more. I got this old piece. I'm not gonna ruin that 3/4. So I got this old piece I had lying around. So you get it right against your stop. This will be the last piece I cut on this. So I'll cut this last one. Watch the ends. The ends. When you cut it like this, you get these burrs that are pretty sharp. We'll take care of that in a second. I mean, taking a look at the pieces I cut already. I got 10 pieces. You look at them the way I just did it. You look at them. You put a square on it. Put them all end to end. They are exactly the same. But when you put them in your template to drill your holes, basically they're all going to be exactly the same. They're going to be the same. If you screw up the first one, you're going to screw up the other 9. So, like I said, I got 10 sections here. I got 1. A pair is going to be a scissor mix section. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. 5 sections. When extended, it's going to be about 40 inches, 42 inches. It all depends on the stroke of the cylinder that I'm going to use for this. But basically, before I even take these over to the drill press to drill my holes, you want to, I guess, take these over to like a belt sander, or I'm going to use a belt sander because I have one available to me. But you want to deburr them each. Like I said, when you cut them, you're going to get these burrs on the end. I mean, if you don't have a belt sander, you could take a metal file and kind of put it in a vise, or just. But you want to take this, you know, the burrs off the edge. It's just a little safer. It makes things a little easier in the template that I made. But that's the hard way of doing it. I have a belt sander. Like I said, I can't make a video for everybody, you know, because I don't know what kind of tools everybody has. I can just make a video for the types of tools that I have. So, and I'm going to use what I have available to me. So, I forgive the movement of the camera, but I do all this myself. I don't have anybody sit here and hold the camera for me. Here's my little belt sander, you know, like a 120 grit belt on there. Real fine. It really doesn't matter. You turn it on, you know, you just deburr the edges. See that they're deburred. Takes the edge off. No sharp edges. I'm not going to do them all now. At the point, I mean, that new blade pretty much cut them pretty sharply. There's very few burrs on here because it's a brand new blade on that chop saw. So now you got we got 10 pieces that are perfectly the exact same length. I'll take it over to my my drill press, and again, you could do this with a drill. I've made up this template for drilling my my holes in my scissor mech, and this helps you kind of drill them exactly where you want them. There's another video I made about making the template and how to make these scissor mech sections perfectly identical. So I'm not going to go through most of it, but I've already made up this this template. You know, it's kind of easy to make up the template, but like I said, we got a scissor mech section, or half a scissor mech section. That's 11 3/4 inch, and you basically want to find out, you know, where the exact center is on this from end to end. Once you find your exact center, you're going to want to drill a hole in this exact center. Again, I'm not going through it with the you know, how to make the template, how to find the exact center. You can kind of take a look at that video. Again, I'm not the best at making videos, but you'll get the point on how this is done. But basically, this template's going to make it easy. I need to drill an end hole and an end hole on each end, of course, and a center hole perfectly in the center of each one of these section halves. So I have my my drill press set up. I'm using 1/4 inch bolts, so I got a 1/4 inch bit in here. Of course, if you have a bit set with 1,000 different you know, bit sizes, you could use a bit that's 1,000th of an inch smaller than this, and it will still work. It'll be nice and tight. That's what you really want. But I don't have those bits. I have a standard set of bits. So I set up my drill press with a 1/4 inch bit, and I got a stop on one end of my template and a stop on the other end. Now basically, what's going to happen here is when I take my scissor mech section and I stick it against that stop and against the back stop. This is the back stop. This is the center hole stop. On the other end, I have an adjustable block here. That adjusts to where I'm going to have my end hole stop. And I have my end hole, which is about the center line of my end hole is about 3/8 of an inch from the end of the rod. Again, center line of my hole is about 3/8. That allows me to drill a 1/4 inch hole and still have some steel at the end. You know, so it's not, you know, it's not weak. But basically, like I said, you know, I'll start by drilling my center hole, and I've already checked this out. So these holes are perfect. But check out my other video. The template video kind of tells you, you know, how to make sure that you maintain center this way. If you have these stops set to where you want them, and you drill each one of these the exact same way, they will be identical. But again, hit up that other video, kind of give you a better idea. You really only want to make a template if you're going to make a lot of scissor mech sections. If you're only making 3 or 4, you know, or 2 or 3 sections, why bother? Just kind of mark them out and do the best you can. But if you're going to make a lot of them and you want them exact, I mean, the template's the way to go. Like I said, I got a 1/4 inch drill bit in here. I kind of try to keep my drill bit snug up into the chuck of the drill, so there's very little play in it. I mean, believe it or not, you can't move it, but you know, a long drill bit will bend a little bit, so I keep it short, so there's very little hang here, very little sticking out of the chuck. Got my chuck tight. I got everything tight. I got my clamps from my clamping my template down. Got my my drill press tight, and you know, let's do it. I got my my drill set to a pretty fast speed. Again, put it against your center line stop. Start your hole nice and easy. Drill it straight through. They got a perfect 1/4 inch center line. That's perfectly centered. This hole is now centered perfectly from end to end. It's perfectly centered. Now basically what you do is just slide this down to the end. Drill your second or your first end hole. Make sure you got to push it against the hole stop and against the backstop. Nice and easy. Drill it. You're going to do this with safety glasses on. So basically, what you want to do is you want to take this. Turn this off so you can hear me a little better. You want to take this and you want to flip it over. Now if you're not sure if you're perfectly centered this way from front to back, not end to end, you want to make sure you flip it so the side that you just drilled, the side that was against the backstop when you drilled the last end hole, the same side is against the backstop. I don't know if that makes any sense. When I drilled this hole, let's try this, explain this. When I drilled this end hole, this side of the steel was against the backstop. If I just flip this around, the opposite side is against. If this is against the backstop, if this center from front to back is off just a hair, they'll be off double that actually. But if you make sure that the same side is against the backstop, they'll be in this exact same position front to back. So I'll drill, make sure I'm against the stop. You also want to make sure you got your backstop clean, so no steel is the steel shavings are pushed up against it. You want it to be perfectly against it because you want it to be identical. I'll fill up this last hole. I got 3 holes, and I'll drill these out. I'll stop talking so much. But like I said, basically you want to keep your template clean. That's in the template making video. I usually use the air gun, blow it around, and clean up later. I'm sure. Now I got 10 rods, scissor mix sections. They all have holes in them, exactly the same. You know, center line of this hole to the center line of this hole on each one of these exactly the same. Center line of this hole to the center line of this hole on every one of these exactly the same. If you do it this way, you can do it any way you want. I mean, it's up to you. I just find this the easiest way. This is probably about the 12th, 13th scissor mech I've made since I've started doing my display. Believe it or not, I'm really getting tired of them. I mean, there's only so many of these you can make that scare people and do stuff. But sometimes they are effective. So after you got your sections made, you should check this out after you make the first pair. I've already checked it out. I know it's perfect, but if you want to make sure that these are exactly identical and everything lines up, you kind of take 3 of your bolts. I don't know if you can see this, but let me see if I can video this. I'll throw a bolt through the hole, each hole in one. Clean it up a little bit, and everything should go together perfectly. If anything's off on any of these, it won't go together like that. So no matter how if it's not identical, if any of these holes are off, it's not identical, you won't be able to take this one off, flip it over and flip it around, and if you flip it over it doesn't line up, then these things aren't identical. I can take another one of these, throw that one off to the side, take another one of these, and do the same thing. It goes together without forcing anything. So basically, each one of these is, take the next one, test it. they're identical. Each one of these is identical. So, yeah. After you do your drilling, you want to take these over to your sander and kind of deburr them again. It's going to leave you. You know, sometimes an older Home Depot drill bit will leave a burr. I don't know if you can see it, but it's you know, these things are pretty sharp. Plus, they're going to interfere with the movement of your scissor mech. So, again, take 5 seconds. Bring them over to the sander. And I'm not going to keep moving this camera. I'm just going to take them over and deburr them. And then if I can figure out how to edit the video, I'll kind of fast forward through it. Yeah, I got all my holes deburred, nice and flat. Once you're at this point, you got all your holes drilled, everything deburred, all the sharp edges taken off. Yep, there's a little bit there. Hit it with the kind of take it every now and then. You forget one, but you know, when you do your final assembly, you'll kind of figure out you know what you missed. You know, this is kind of the pre-assemble part here. You want to make sure that your scissor mech actually works before you even go to the next step. You know, of course, you're not going to hook it up to your cylinder or anything. You're just going to want to kind of see if it all goes together smoothly. And this is where it kind of gets tedious, where you got to pull all these bolts and nuts and bolts and tighten them and loosen them and tighten them and loosen them. Normally at this point, I kind of step back and I clean up all the shards, but we're doing a video, so I'm not going to do that now. Kind of what I forgot to mention before is you kind of want to make sure that the steel that you start with is kind of perfectly straight. You don't want any bent ones. If it's bent, it's going to make a headache for you in the process. So, you know, basically, with your next step is to start assembling your scissor mech sections. And again, two of these make up a scissor mech section. That's what I call them. You can call them whatever you want. Take one of these nuts and bolts, throw it through there. Again, some people do things differently. Some people put a washer between the two to make things move simpler. I don't do it. Every scissor mech section, unless something was bent or I needed to stick it in there, I don't put washers or any bushings between it or any spacers. I just you know, I just make sure that you know, everything runs smoothly before I start tightening things up. So I'll tighten this up. This is a 7/16 nut and bolt for a 1/4 inch diameter bolt. So it's, wrenches are 7/16. So you want to tighten it up. And the reason why you got to use wrenches on these is because these are locking nuts, and they kind of, you know, so. You put this together and you can't move this easily. You want to back off a hair, just a little bit, so it moves. Of course, this is just a mock-up, so you really don't have to worry about it. It moves. You know. Again, you can tighten it up later. There's one scissor mech section ready to get connected to the next scissor mech section, but you got to put them all together. So again, do all your centers first. Makes things easier. And I'm just going to throw nuts and bolts in each one of these. You know, of course, you know, I'm not going to be able to answer every question on this video. I'm probably going to miss a couple things. If you got any questions, you can find me on Nightmare on Maple Ave on Facebook. Yeah, I'm willing to answer any questions I can. But again, all these measurements are specific to this prop that I'm building for the winner of our contest. You could change things as much as you want. Make things any dimensions that you want. Just make sure that these scissor mech sections, no matter what your dimensions are, just make sure that they're all identical. Make sure the center to center holes are identical. Again, you can't keep talking about this until I'm blue in the face. You know, center line of this hole should be the center line. The distance, I'm sorry, the distance from the center line of this hole should be the exact same distance from the center line of this hole to the center line of this hole. The center line of this hole should be the exact same distance as that distance. Talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but yes. Let's face it. Some people are mechanically inclined. I mean, you could do 100 videos, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. I mean, a lot of times people ask me, how do I build a prop, and you kind of when I get to the point of telling them what kind of tools I use to make that prop or make that mechanism, they kind of lose interest because they just don't have the tools. They just don't have the they have the heart, but they just don't have the means of building these things. I mean, I know there's a learning process. This is taking me forever to do it this way. There's a learning process, but I'm almost 50 years old. My dad taught me a lot of stuff. And, another section number 3. Now, if you got it tight here, if it's a little tight here, who cares? Again, this is just mock-up. If it's tight when they're flush with each other, I don't know if you can see that, when they're flush with each other, who cares? When the scissor mech is all completed, these will never be flush with each other like that. They will always be offset like that, like a scissor. I mean, they will never come together like this because it'll be prevented by the bolts. It will always be like this. So you just want to make sure that it basically works from, let's say, from this point on, from here to here, here to here. Make sure it moves smoothly. If it touches here, who cares? Sorry if I'm sniffling. It's an allergy season. My nose is always stuck. So. Get yourself a set of these speed wrenches. I mean, it makes things so much easier when doing this stuff. You can back off on it a little bit. Another section done. Last one. Tighten this one up. Oops. I don't know if I've got this camera in the right position. You guys can see all this. You're going to tighten this stuff up. If I tighten it too much, just kind of throw the wrench back on there. Kind of back off on it so it moves. It's all free. And I've got 5 scissor mech sections, all with a bolt through the center. Now what you want to do is you should want to start assembling each section to section. Now it doesn't matter what your orientation is, whether these are the nut head or the bolt head or the nuts on either side. If it's on that side or that side, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I just like to keep all my nut heads on the same side, so it kind of looks better. Usually, if something looks right, the function of it, is usually going to be right also. Basically, take one of your scissor mech sections, and you want to start assembling. Put a bolt through the top from one section to the other, where they overlap, and you can see this. They overlap. Take another bolt, and if you made everything identical, it'll all go together perfectly. Okay. Sometimes you need more than 2 hands, but if it helps, throw a bolt on there for now, or a nut. Throw a nut on there. Sorry, sometimes I say nut when I need a bolt. I say bolt when I need nut. Takes a little time throwing these things together, but once you start. Now, once you get 2 sections together, see if it closes up. See if it opens up. See if it closes up before you start tightening nuts and bolts. I mean, that's the way I do it, so you don't waste too much time. Yeah, you have you know, all your nuts and bolts tightened, and you find out you've made a mistake or something, then you know it's a pain in the butt to loosen. I don't know how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 26 nuts and bolts. You want to tighten them all up. So now that now comes the boring part. I have 2 sections put together. They close perfectly. Again, I don't know if you can see this. I'm not the greatest video maker in the world, but you know, they close perfectly. They open perfectly. It's nice and smooth. Again, if all of these sections are identical, you shouldn't have any problems from here on in. Again, I keep all my nut heads the same. Take another nut and a bolt, pop it together. Again, this is the tedious part, the boring part. I kind of made things faster. I put a 7/16 nut driver on my my impact gun, kind of make things faster and easier. You can put all these together. That's kind of what I'm going to do. I'm just going to throw all of these sections together. Then I'm going to tighten up everything once I have them all together. Kind of just makes things a little easier. This is one of those things where you need 4 hands. You know, if you have somebody to help you, I mean, that's even better. It's 8 o'clock here in the morning. My family's not even up yet, so there's nobody for me to ask help. I do most of my builds at you know, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm an early riser, so you know, try to get the Halloween stuff out of the way before my family wakes up and decide if they want to go to the amusement park or something. And then you got to do the family thing. You know, again, the video might be a little long. I mean, I'm going to try to stick it on some sort of video editor and kind of speed the process and, you know, make things move along. But you know what? You could always hit fast forward while you're watching a video, if you watch the video. Like I said, we're building this scissor mech prop to ship out to the winner of our groups, my groups, Nightmare on Maple Lab on Facebook. We reached 1,000 members, and you know, basically I said, yeah, I wanted to do something. You know, I don't do a lot of videos, very few. I just started doing a couple last year. And kind of do something nice for one of the members. Hopefully, you know, they can, you know, use this to scare somebody at their haunt, and the video kind of help anybody else who wants to make one. Yeah, I got my driver with the 7/16" nut driving bit on there. I'll just tighten them all up, then I'll fine tune them later. Flip it over. Tighten the rest. Makes things so much easier if you have a drill driver, but it's one of those things that, you know, sometimes you need 4 hands, 3 hands. But if you're a little ingenious, you can make up a little stand or something to kind of help you hold this thing. So there you go. Things are tight. I mean, I'll loosen stuff up here. But basically, we have a working scissor prop. It closes completely. And it opens. You've succeeded in making a scissor prop. But you know, basically, you're gonna take. Your scissor prop is going to take a little bit of linear motion from, in this case, it's going to be a cylinder, a pneumatic cylinder or air-operated cylinder. In the case of a scissor mech prop, you're going to want a double-acting cylinder. This is a double-acting cylinder. If you put air in this end, it will push this rod and extend it this way. If you push air in this way, the rod will be pushed back. So basically, air in this end will extend your scissor mech prop. Air in this end will close your scissor mech prop. But again, you're going to have a little bit of linear motion into, let's see what we got. We can measure this out. Move some of these tools out of the way. But here's an extended scissor mech prop that, when closed, you basically got 3 inches from center hole, or just 2 3/4 from center hole to center hole on this end to this end. And when you open it up, depending on the stroke of your cylinder, the center line from this hole to the other end, it's fully extended, I got 42.5 inches. So with basically probably I think I'm going to use a 4-inch stroke on this. Looking at it, you're going to get 42 inches of stroke. So closed. You connect your goul, your prop to this end. This end will of course be connected to the base and connected to the cylinder that extends it. You connect your goul to this end. When it extends, when you trigger your prop, basically it jumps out 42 inches. I normally, this is just my rule of thumb, but I try not to extend these too far beyond a 45-degree angle, or a 90-degree angle, I should say. This is 90 degrees. Here's a square. Sometimes, you know, it depends on the strength of your cylinder. If your cylinder strength is low, you know, if you extend it beyond that 45-degree angle, you'll have it'll struggle to pull it back. But like I said, my rule of thumb is basically, if you could see this, when my props are extended, I normally don't have this beyond a 90-degree angle. You know, this is 90 degrees, but that's just my way of thinking. I mean, I don't tend to know everything. Everybody does things differently. Everybody is going to have 100 different opinions, like I said in the other video. But basically, this is the end of part 1, building the scissor mech. Now I got to think about how I'm going to build the base for this and make this thing move smoothly. See you in part 2.